Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious true crime cases of recent times. This story will take you deep into the jungles of Panama, where two young women set out on a beautiful hike and never returned. This is the story of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, two adventurous young women from the Netherlands whose journey turned into a haunting mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Kris and Lisanne were both in their early 20s and had recently graduated. They were best friends from Amersfoort in the Netherlands. Both had a passion for exploring the world, and they decided to spend 6 weeks in Panama to immerse themselves in the culture, learn Spanish, and work with children in the area. In March 2014, they arrived in Boquete, a small town in western Panama. Boquete is known for its beautiful scenery, with lush green forests, winding rivers, and famous hiking trails. Kris and Lisanne were excited about the adventures that lay ahead. They had been preparing for months, and they had even researched the local hikes, knowing that these trails could be challenging. On April 1, 2014, Kris and Lisanne decided to go on a hike to celebrate their arrival in Boquete. They chose the Pianista Trail, a well-known path that led through the forest and up to a beautiful viewpoint overlooking the mountains. They left for the hike around 11 a.m., taking just one backpack with them. Witnesses saw them walking towards the trail that morning, and they were spotted with a local dog from the area, named Azul. He was often known to follow hikers up the trail and back. However, as evening approached, Kris and Lisanne hadn't returned. The dog, Azul, came back alone. This was unusual since the trail was typically a few hours hike, and they should have been back by sunset. By the next day, their host family became concerned and reported the two missing. When Kris and Lisanne didn't show up, search teams were quickly organized. Police, local guides, and even the Dutch government got involved in the search. The Panamanian authorities, along with volunteers, combed through the dense jungle, covering every path they could find. The search continued for 10 days, but there was no trace of the young women. The families of Kris and Lisanne flew from the Netherlands to Panama, desperate for answers. They distributed flyers, offered rewards, and did everything they could to keep the search alive. But as weeks went by, hope began to fade. The jungle was thick, the terrain was rough, and there were so many unknowns. The families eventually had to return home with no answers. Then, 2 months later, on June 14th, a local woman from a nearby village found a blue backpack along the banks of a river, about 8 hours away from the Pianista Trail. The backpack was in remarkable condition, almost as if someone had placed it there recently. Inside, the authorities found 2 pairs of sunglasses, money, Lisanne's passport, a water bottle, and most importantly, both Kris and Lisanne's cell phones and a camera. The discovery of the backpack sparked hope, but what they found inside those phones and the camera would only deepen the mystery. When investigators checked the phones, they found that both Kris and Lisanne had made multiple attempts to call emergency services. The first calls were made just hours after they started their hike, around 4:30 p.m. on April 1st. They tried calling emergency numbers from both phones, but because they were deep in the forest, there was no cell service. The phone logs showed they tried calling for help over and over again in the days that followed. On April 6th, Lisanne's phone died after multiple failed attempts to reach anyone. Kris's phone, however, showed activity until April 11th, 10 days after they'd gone missing. After that, no further calls were made. The camera held even more clues. The first photos on the camera were typical tourist shots, Kris and Lisanne smiling, standing on the trail, and taking pictures of the scenic surroundings. The last normal photo was taken around 1 p.m. on the day they left, showing them at the peak of the Pianista Trail. But then, things got stranger. Starting in the early hours of April 8th, the camera showed a series of eerie nighttime photos. There were almost 90 photos taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Most of these images were dark, blurry shots of the jungle, but a few of them showed strange objects, rocks, bits of trash. There were even close-up images of Kris's hair, possibly showing some form of injury. But it was impossible to make sense of what was happening from these photos. Were they trying to signal for help in the dark? Was someone else taking these photos? The camera offered clues, but it raised even more questions. About 2 months after the backpack was found, search teams uncovered bone fragments along the riverbank. DNA tests confirmed they belonged to Kris and Lisanne. Kris's bones were found bleached and in a more decomposed state, while Lisanne's bones appeared to have decomposed naturally. This difference in the state of the remains raised even more questions, with some experts suggesting that Kris's bones might have been exposed to the elements or possibly even tampered with. But beyond these fragments, no full remains were ever found, and no conclusive evidence explained how they died. So, what happened to Kris and Lisanne? There are many theories, but none provide clear answers. Some people think they got lost, wandered off the trail, and suffered accidents in the jungle. Others believe they might have been the victims of foul play, maybe even taken by someone who lived in the area. There are also questions about why some of Kris's bones seemed unnaturally bleached. Some experts think this could be from exposure to the jungle, while others argue it might point to something more sinister. In the end, the case of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon remains unsolved. The jungles of Panama hold many secrets, and the mystery of what happened to these two young women may never be fully understood. Today, people remember Kris and Lisanne as adventurous, bright, and kind young women who wanted to explore the world and make a difference. Their families still hope for answers and continue to keep their memory alive, hoping that someday, the full story of what happened on that trail will come to light. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as haunting as we did, please like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to Kris and Lisanne? We'd love to hear from you.